If you try to be somebody, I don't know, I call them maybe know-it-alls. I talk about learn-it-alls, know-it-alls, or you come up, and you're using this complex language and you're trying to make it sound like you're better than somebody else. And then you try to come across to get them to move into action for some sort. Well, it's not gonna happen because they don't relate with you. And several times, they don't even think you're authentic anyways, and it's all about creating that type of connection, and story is like the key to make that happen.
Think about some of the best training you've ever experienced. I bet the trainer was using a ton of storytelling, educating you by being entertaining. But we've all been through those dreary corporate learning sessions when you're force-fed a dearth of data and logic with little to no narrative to create context for why the information even matters. Today, we'll fix that. Welcome to the Business of Story. I'm your host, Park Howell. Joining us is Damon Lembi, a 3-time best-selling author, host of the Learn It All podcast, and CEO of Learnit, which has upskilled over 2 million people. Drawing from his more than 30 years in the learning industry, Damon reveals how to make training stories relatable, memorable, and emotional so people can actually feel them. By using metaphors and analogies, create narrative transportation where learners see themselves in your content, and the accountability mechanisms that ensure learning becomes doing instead of what Damon calls treason. Hello, Damon. Welcome to the show.
Park, it's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, you are in the learning world, the teaching world, the coaching world. Real quick, can you tell our listeners what you do and what Learnit is?
Yes. I'm Damon Lembi, and Learnit is a live learning platform, and our customers turn to us, all B2B, when they have challenges like they're promoting people from an individual contributor to a new leader, and they don't have the skills that they need. Or maybe their organization is struggling with silos and communication's terrible. Or maybe retention is tough, and they want to build career plans that people can learn and grow and better themselves. So that's really what Learn It does. And we do it through mostly virtual training, on Zoom, 2-hour sessions, and we work across the board. And Park, I mean, hopefully I don't look this old, but I have been at this for 30 years.
30 years. And you've got 2 little boys, too. So, man, you're starting
Well, a
late
boy
on
and a
the...
girl.
Oh,
Boy
a
and a
boy and
girl.
a girl. Yeah.
I
So
was a late starter, but here I am, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old.
well, you're going to learn about that too, my friend. And before that, you were playing baseball at Arizona State University, just down the road from us. What position did you play?
Yeah, so I started off as a third baseman and at Pepperdine, actually. I was a high school All-American in my glory days. And then I ended up at Arizona State as a first baseman. And again, one of my glory days was in the 1994 World Series. I hit a home run in Game 1 against Miami.
Wow, that's awesome. And that was the Pat Murphy days as the coach, right?
You know, it's so funny. It was I did both. So, which I have a great story, which is probably not even appropriate for this podcast, but
Oh, yeah, it is.
for the Jim. So I got a great Jim Brock story. So Jim Brock, I played for the final year of his life, and the story I have, if you want to hear it, was 2 days before he died. And then the next year, I played for Pat Murphy when he came in from Notre Dame, and I believe Pat Murphy just won the National League Manager award for the second time.
Wow. And so it was Pat Murphy that took you to the World Series?
Jim Brock.
Jim Brock did. So,
Yeah.
boy, he went out on a high note then, huh?
He went on a high note. He actually died. He was dealing with cancer, and we knew he wasn't going to be able to make it through, but he was such a, courageous man. He actually died during right before our game 3 of the College World Series.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
did you guys win that series?
No, we lost. We lost to Oklahoma. And
Mhm.
the really crazy thing about that was that when I got to Arizona State, I was a transfer. My roommate at the time was a guy named Bucky Buckles. And we said to ourselves, I wonder if we're going to be make the team or what's going to happen. Well, long story short, good old Bucky failed out of Arizona State during the fall season, which is a little tough to do. And the next time I saw Bucky was the bottom of the ninth inning, one out, one guy on, facing him at Oklahoma. How crazy
No,
is that? That year, and he threw me a curveball for anybody who's a baseball fan, and I knew that first pitch curveball, lower right-hand corner for a strike, I knew I wasn't gonna be able to hit him, so he shut us down. So the year started, Bucky and I as roommates wondering if we'd make the team, and then facing each other in the ninth inning of the College World Series about 9 months later.
no, that is weird. That is weird. So, what got you into the learning world?
So after that World Series, I was expected to be drafted, I thought, between the 8th and the 12th round. I've already been drafted a couple times, and I was really excited to start my baseball career. Well, 12 guys on my team got drafted. I wasn't one of them. So I was completely depressed. I went back for one more year at Arizona State, had a lackluster year. I didn't get drafted again. And here I am, 22 years old, and I don't know if any of my skills are transferable. I didn't know what I can do because I went all in on baseball. I was really lucky. I came from a family, a really big real estate family, and but I was intimidated. I didn't know if I wanted to go into real estate or if I could even contribute. But my dad, Park, had a was start. He had started a bunch of different companies, and one was this computer training company. And like a lot of great entrepreneurs, he wanted to solve a challenge he saw for himself. He went and took a class somewhere. He thought it was terrible, long, and boring, and he came up with this idea for Learnit that was short 90-minute classes, and he wanted them to be story type classes. People would just get excited at going there. And so he came up with the idea for Learnit. It was just starting in June of 95 when I was getting done with school. I started off as a receptionist because I didn't know any better. And I started as a receptionist for two reasons. Didn't know if I had any skills, and I also didn't want to start at the top of the company because I wanted to work my way up and show my value. So there I was, started off as a receptionist, I answered more phones than anybody. And fast forward 30 years, I've been the CEO for probably 23, 24 years, and it's been a wild, but really fun ride as well.
30 years ago. So, your dad was ahead of the curve quite a bit, wasn't he? Because not a lot of training, online training was going on, and especially this idea of bringing story to it. So many people are led by logic and reason when they're trying to train something versus really incorporating story into it.
Absolutely. I mean, this was he was always ahead of the curve. He was a big thinker, and he was trying to digitize his portfolio. And he went to a class, and it was just information based, right? Read page by page. And he said, I could just go get a book. I'm not learning anything here. And so that's when he called a guy who first was a CEO, and he said, I want to have great storytellers, musicians, comedians. I want people to feel like Learn It is a place where they can connect and they learn things and they walk away inspired. And so he was way ahead of the curve. I mean, back in the day, you'd go take an Excel class and you had a big physical manual on the desk and it was 3 days long. Our classes were bite size, 90-minute sessions that were even engaging and easier to retain the information.
Yeah, bite size back then is 90 minutes. This day and age, it's like 9 minutes, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why I mean, that's think about that. I mean, bite size 90 minutes now, it's like if you have to do it in the time of a TikTok video.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how are you guys incorporating storytelling into the trainings that you do now? And one other question on that, I guess I should ask first is all this training emanating out of your people there, or is it that you are tapping into, brilliant minds all around the world?
I mean, that's a great question. And I want to say it's a little bit of both. Well, first of all, I mean, all our content we own ourselves, like all the models, we've developed it. So it's all our own IP. But to answer your question, what are we coming up with? It's listening to our clients. And we're not saying our clients, I mean, Henry Ford said, if you listen to your clients, you build a faster horse, of course, right? So we want to be on the cutting edge of things, but we're listening to our clients and really not looking at like, okay, we want to build a critical thinking class or we want to have a new leader class. We're like, what are the challenges and problems they're having? And how do we help them get to those outcomes? So we're looking for what those outcomes are, and we're reverse engineering to build content that will work best for them. I mean, obviously, right now, and I'm sure we'll get into this, there's a lot around AI, and not just how to use the tools, okay, but it's AI adoption. How do you get people confident and comfortable in leveraging these tools? So we're doing a gamut around, I mean, across the gamut when it comes to AI is one of the main areas that we're looking for moving forward in the future.
Yeah, and so with like training such as AI, does that come out of professionals inside of your organization, or do you go and tap into people outside the organization, bring them in, and have them train through your frameworks?
I would say that, um, our people internally, I've got about 7 full-time instructors, and they're doing their best to learn how to, leverage out AI, but at the end of the day, it's better to get people on the outside who are living it, rolling up their sleeves, doing it, learning from them, and co-collaborating with us to build out that content. And we're even kind of evolving from not just delivering the training park, but also looking at being a workforce transformation company in the sense where we have our training, but also helping with behavior change, where helping these organizations understand what do they need to do to get ready to not only roll out AI, but execute on it. And when we do that, we're 100% using people on the outside, and partnering up with them, and maybe at some point, and I'm transparent with these organizations, we'll take off the training wheels and do it ourselves once we learn. But right
Mhm.
now, we're bridging that gap with our clients from just training to helping with this workforce transformation and using, I guess you could call them experts, even though with AI being so new, I mean, it's hard to even say experts.
So, going back to my convoluted question I started with, how is it that you guys are bringing story in to what you do with trading?
So, first and foremost, I would say 80% of what we do is, I don't like this term, but soft skills, communication, leadership, power skills, human skills, whatever you want to call it. The other 20% is usually technical skills, Microsoft Excel, Copilot. And that's important to mention because I'm going to focus on the 80%. And all our classes are designed with story in mind. I mean, they all start with a hook, tension, and then they take you to resolution.
And so when your dad kicked this off, 3 decades ago, and he was thinking about story, was he actually thinking about story frameworks or really talking about personalities and characters that have lived and can tell a good story that you're gonna connect with?
The latter, I mean, 100% the latter. He just wanted people who could tell good stories and were engaging and made people walking out of the room feeling good. Because I think you know as well as I know, sometimes it's less about what you're actually saying and more about how you're saying it. And that was a kind of great storyteller he was, which I always admired him. I'd sit in the back of his shareholder meetings, and I'm not even sure sometimes if he knew what he was talking about, but he'd get people so pumped up with what was going on. And he'd bring somebody else to share the details, but he'd get them really seeing themselves in the story that he's telling. And that's what we try to do with our Learnit classes as well, is we don't want it to be generic where, it's unrelatable, but how do you see yourself and your organization in the content that we're delivering for you?
Yeah. In my storytelling world, I'm always looking at a lot of different ways to tell them in lots of different industries and angles. And in fact, when I started a business of story almost 10 years ago now, and I had like 50 episodes in, people are going, well, what more is there to say about story? And I'm like, I'm not really sure. But all these people started showing up from all different angles. And I just had a guy on the podcast, and it might be a book you'd be interested in,
Yeah.
when communicating data. And in
Okay.
this case, it was about internal audits. And it's a book called The Storyteller's Ledger. And it's written by this gentleman by the name of Shagan Gannison. And I thought, and I'm reading it because I'm going to be doing some work with a very large credit union in the nation. I'll be going out to DC here in about a month to do that, and they suggested, hey, to really understand our world, read this particular book. And I'll be honest with you, I was like, oh, auditing. Okay, well, I got to. How do we make this interesting? Well, this guy in this book, The Storyteller's Ledger, does a remarkable job from teaching how auditors can come in and put context to their numbers and their data through the use of story. And he's got story structures he used, a lot of great examples in there. And I'll tell you, Damon, it's one of the best books on storytelling that I've read probably in the last 10 years. And it just came from such a surprising place, but I think it speaks to what you're talking about. He trains auditors how to do this by using story to demonstrate how to do it.
I've said this a million times, and I truly believe this, Perk. I feel like storytelling is kind of sometimes an overlooked skill, especially when it comes to leaders. I mean, there's so many bad storytellers out there, especially when it comes to dry data, right? And I think, and I've fallen to this trap. I actually have my all hands meeting tomorrow, and I've got a bunch of numbers this year, so I want to, do my best to not bore everybody to death. Is But so many people just dump information, slide after slide. And, I think that's such a lost opportunity to really connect with your audience. So I'm definitely going to check out that book because if you could make internal audits, for lack of a better term, sexy or engaging, I mean, that would be, I mean, you could make anything.
Yeah. Well, one of the big learnings I got from it is an internal audit is always filled with conflict, and conflict is the marrow of every story. So instead of just going in and spewing out the numbers and here's what we found and here's what we think you need to do, he talks about you got to set the scene. What is the environment within the company that this is happening in? Who are the characters that are involved in this? What are their beliefs and values, and how are they different than maybe what the expectations are? To understand all of that, to be able to put real meaning to those numbers. I always like to say the first syllable of the word numbers is num because they mean nothing to us unless you have them in the context of the story. And I just think he's done a beautiful job of teaching storytelling across the board, but especially in this, sort of sort of crazy niched audit world where you wouldn't imagine story would have a big impact.
I mean, I believe you and I talked about this when you came on my show, but wouldn't you say a good story needs to have some type of conflict or tension within the first minute or two?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's set up problem resolution. That's the way our brains are wired to make meaning out of the madness of being human beings. And so, if you just come on and, like in this case, you've got all hands meeting tomorrow, if you were just to show up and say, and this, we got this number, and it's because
Yeah.
of this, and then this happened, and then, well, you never get out of exposition. You just anding your audience to death.
And
And
yourself to death.
yeah, the brain goes, "Oh God, when will he stop?" But if you said, we came up with this and we see it's really important here, but what's holding us back from achieving that is this major problem. Therefore, we believe we have a solution for it, but we want to hear from you as well. Now you've given it complete story context, right?
Yeah, I love it. A quick little story about storytelling with numbers is we work with one of the largest transportation companies in the Bay Area. And I went to the leadership graduation about 3 weeks ago. And this one woman came up to me and said, "Hey, look, I've been an engineer here for years, and I've always had the most difficult time getting up and presenting, just because it just makes me feel awkward, and I just basically read numbers and just want to get out." She's like, "From taking your presentation, and we have it's called like psychology with PowerPoint, even that they're using for this class, and presenting the data around the story." Now, I don't know if they use the ABT framework or not. I don't know. But what I do know is that she felt like leaving it after that, when she got done with it, that she was much more confident and felt great that people actually connected with her more than ever before.
Yeah, just because she simply told a story. I taught at Arizona State University, your old alma
Great. I
mater,
was going
for
to say great school.
I think I spent more time on that campus than I did my own at WSU. But I was teaching a storytelling master's course, and there was a gentleman in there who was from the financial world and in the sustainability ESG world, which is very complex communication. And he would get up and he would blah, 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 blah. And then one day, after learning the ABT and one other framework I taught him, he came back and he gave me this big bro hug out of nowhere in front of the entire class. I'm like, "What, dude? What's going on?" He goes, "I tried it. I was so frightened to do it. I thought they were going to laugh me off the stage. But I started with an ABT and then a little connection story of how this is connecting with me or maybe his background." And he goes, "I got fours and fives out of five on the form afterwards. And I had people come up and said, 'I don't know what you did, Jonathan, but that's the best presentation I've ever seen you make.'" And it was simply because he added a little bit of story to the context.
Well, what I think is important about what you just said right there is that he learned something, but he had the courage to try it. And I think that, Park, a lot of times that's where learning fails, is that it goes from something that you sit there and maybe absorb, but if you don't take the next step and get out of your comfort zone and actually put it into practice, then you just forget it and you lose it. That's the part of the story that I love, is that he went in there and he tried it, because now he's going to build that momentum and keep doing that. So for your listeners out there, whether it's this podcast or Park storytelling workshop or whatever it is that people are doing, you got to find something that you're going to put into practice. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time.
Yeah, and you got to prove it out to yourself. Does
You got to
this
prove it
really
out to
work?
yourself.
Let me try it. So that's a good lead to this question then. In your work at
Mhm.
Learn It, how do you build in, and what maybe are some of your secret sauces that you build into your training to actually get people to do it? And I mean do it within the next 24 hours.
Well, I mean, there's a couple things, but first of all, let's go back to what we talked about when it comes to our classes and using story. We don't want this just to be an information dump, right? Or a knowledge transfer. We want these stories to be relatable, memorable, and emotional, right? So people can actually feel it. And when you do that, I think that people are more acceptable of putting it forth and doing something with it, right? Now, I don't necessarily say, you turn around the next day and you're going to implement it, but with a lot of the cohorts and the work we do, we actually have accountability built in. So we follow up with them, or they get little drip emails or saying, "Hey, give us an example of how you implemented the four growth framework around feedback, or our difficult conversations, or our ear model." And so people have to keep it top of mind, hopefully, and they come back and share it with us. We're also building. I know you got Story Genie, which is awesome, but we're about 80% through of an AI habit coach. Um, where if you go take our feedback class and you maybe forget what you learned, and you have a conversation where you have to give feedback, you can run through verbally with this role playing, and it also tracks that, right? So it has a dashboard, doesn't show you the results of the conversation, but the people are actually using it. So I think that there is a need big time for accountability, because there's that saying that I love, Park. I don't know if I said to you before, but learning without doing is treason. You got to put it into action.
Learning without doing is treason. Why treason of all words?
Well, you're just lying to yourself, right? I guess. I mean, there's a gentleman by the name of David Katz from Plastic Bank who taught me that. But a lot of people get stuck in just learning all the time. They'll go from one degree to the next. They'll go from one book to the next, and try everybody else's model. But they don't have their own point of view. And I feel like you're just lying to yourself that time, right? It goes back to the gentleman who used the ABT framework. You have to put it into action. So whether it's getting an accountability partner, or whether it's a lot of times with our content as well, if it's for mid-level managers, the senior executives all have learning prompts that they can follow up with their team on their next one-on-one. And we try to get them to bake it into their performance reviews. As far as, hey, some of the classes you've taken and everything. That's tough to do, but that's where I come up with. I didn't come up with it, but that's the whole learning without doing is treason.
Interesting. I was about a year ago doing a presentation, training actually. It was a 90-minute training in person with a group. And after it, I had got a question that I had never received before. And someone raised their hand and said, Park, how many stories did you just use on us this 90 minutes to make your point? And I go, I have no idea. And so I had to go back and look, and I realized in every 90-minute training, I am presenting my points via anywhere from 21 to 27 anecdotal stories. And it fluctuates because, of course, some questions will come up that you weren't anticipating, and you want to illustrate the point through something you experienced or you saw someone else experience. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize in my storytelling training that I was actually using that many stories.
I think that's awesome. And if you're out there and you're doing these types of trainings virtually, or if you have one of those plods that tracks transcripts, you can go back and run that through a GPT, and it'll give you answers like that to how many times you're doing it. Yeah, I would say all of our most of our sessions are 2 hours long. They're full of metaphors and analogies because again, we're trying to what's it called? Narrative transportation, where people
Yep.
can see themselves in these stories.
The neural coupling. So now
Yeah.
you're connecting with them, and then that is the leads to the transportation. You got to have that coupling first. It's like a train, I suppose. You got to couple their caboose to your engine, and then transport them to a new place in the world.
Yeah, in your workshops, do you find that a lot of people struggle with, seeing how they take what you've learned to putting it into action when it comes to storytelling because 'cause they're afraid to put it in or they don't know how to, couple it, with what you're learning or not really?
Early on, I did, yeah, and I learned
Mm.
as a trainer, and it came to me once, when I was working with this large sales team in Chicago, and I'd done a lot of training, there are 60 of them, and, the lead trainer came back to me, my sponsor that brought me in, she goes, "We're loving this, this is great, but we're getting half of our people saying they're afraid to do it because they don't feel like they're good storytellers or that story is going to work for them." And I said, "So let's reframe it, let's have them not think about story in and of itself, but have them think about a moment in time that they can talk about when everything changed. Something like just they had this huge aha moment, or they were working with a customer. And then we teach them use the five primal elements. So you can do this without being a story theorist. Give me a timestamp. When did this happen? It triggers the limbic brain to say, oh man, something must have happened because Park just told me this was June of 2025. I better pay attention to what happened so I know what to do in case it ever happens to me. Then give it a location stamp. This happened in Chicago on a wintry afternoon in December or whatever. That fires up the theater of the mind. They are now starting to couple with you and starting to picture what's going on. Then you introduce one central character. I was working with Shelley, and here's what Shelley was trying to do, and it was super important to her because of this. But now we're into act two. As soon
Mhm.
as you throw that but in, the pivot is there. Now you're going to introduce the problem. But she was this tremendous salesperson who believed that she couldn't tell a story because she didn't know what storytelling was or how to do it. And she was, because of that, losing out on revenue generation. Therefore, she was able to 10x her success over the next 6 months simply by rethinking how story works and putting it into a moment in time that she can easily talk about because we have all experienced or have witnessed these moments in time that make our business point for us. That's
And
how I learned. It's not about story, it's about taking us to a moment in time.
yeah, and also obviously you beautifully threw in there the ABT framework,
Yep.
of course,
It's
but you
the
made
DNA of storytelling.
but you made it relatable, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
made it relatable and something that they could, picture happening to themselves.
And that's it. I mean, you wanna connect with that person so they can look at you and say, "Wow, Damon's just like me."
Yeah.
Damon, I've experienced the same thing he's experienced. We have that in common. So, Damon, when it happened to you, what did you do? Because what I did didn't work at all. Now I'm really interested in how you overcame that.
And I think that's so important, and I try to do that whether it's in a sales call or just a conversation with them, is if you try to be somebody, I don't know, I call them maybe know-it-alls, I talk about learn-it-alls, know-it-alls, or you come up, and you're using this complex language and you're trying to make it sound like you're better than somebody else, and then you try to come across to get them to move into action for some sort. Well, it's not gonna happen because they don't relate with you, right? And several times, they don't even think you're authentic anyways, and it's all about creating that type of connection, and story is, like, the key to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, you never, ever, ever want to speak down, talk down, teach down to
Mhm,
anyone. You are always coming from beneath them.
mhm.
Really understanding who they are, appreciating where they are in the world, what it is they want, empathizing with them why they don't have it. Here's the end, but therefore again, but empathizing why they don't have it. Therefore, now sharing your support on here's some new ways to think about and or tackle this problem that we've seen a lot of success with. Would you like to hear it? Who's going to say no to that? Because you've spoken up to them.
Yeah, and so when a lot of the customers we work with, their team members struggle with that because people are moving from an individual contributor to a new manager role. And
Mhm.
so the first thing that they think, Park, is that they gotta show how smart they are and how, how they got everything figured out and they have all the answers, so they don't connect with their people, right? Because they're speaking down to them instead of coming from a place of humility. So for all you listeners out there who are in a role where you're trying to get people to move them to action, or it's totally fine. Be authentic, be vulnerable. You don't have nobody want expects you to have all the answers, right? I mean, so if you come across that way, Park was just speaking, that's where people will get buy-in and actually trust you.
Yeah, that was the best statement I could ever make when I was running my ad agency and I was working with a client and they would ask me a question that I didn't know. I would simply say, "Hell, that's a great question. I have no idea. Let me
Mhm.
go find out and I'm going to get back to you." And then you get back to them very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
it's
I mean, the last thing I say about that is, "Hey, give me 3 days, I'll get back to you," and then you get back to them in 1 day, so you don't overpromise and underproduce. I
yeah.
mean, that you doing all of that is what will lead to building trust with your team, to your customers, whomever.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I love the ABT as well, is it uses the three forces of story of agreement, contradiction, consequence. But what it really does when you use it well is it builds the three forces of trust. You are demonstrating that you understand your audience.
Mhm.
You are illustrating that you appreciate what they want, why they want it, and you are showing them empathy as to why they don't have it. Understanding, appreciation, and empathy is going to lead to that neural coupling. They're like, all right, man, you've taken the time to understand who I am, what I'm about.
And if you don't take the time to understand them, you lose them right there, right?
Yeah.
You lose them right there, and that's why I think I was talking to you before about how important story is when it comes on to sales calls, because it's an opportunity for 2 things. 1, of course, for you to communicate and tell your story, but also for you as a sales rep to really learn how to listen and get the customers to engage and tell their story as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, what are some of the trendings that you are seeing happening now in coaching? What are leaders and managers coming to you for that maybe they weren't coming to you for a year or two ago?
Well, I mean, obviously, it goes without saying the world's under a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of craziness going on. And so there's disengagement and there's a burnout in organizations. So it's helping our leaders um, have the tools to learn how to be more transparent when communicating with their teams and over communicating. Because, if you're not being transparent or communicating, people are making up these stories in their own minds, right? So we're doing a lot of work around collaboration and communication, more so than really ever before. And also with the 5 different generations in the workforce, um, we, we do a lot of work around that as well, and have built a lot of content around how the baby boomers or whatever they're called, or boomers, and the Gen Zs, and how you can learn from everybody around there. So I mean, those are some of the big ones. And I also, again, we could sit there and talk all day about AI. And what I really see coming down the path is pretty soon teaching leadership courses, hybrid leadership. And I'm not talking about in person and remote. I'm talking human and agents. Because you're going to have, and you're already seeing it, humans who are leading a team of agents and humans, and making sure that it happens in a way where that the humans know that they're important. Because if they're not felt that way and they feel like that they're putting themselves out of a job, they're going to self-sabotage a lot of these AI initiatives. So there's a lot of work around all those different topics.
And each one of those generations, not only do they think and speak a little bit differently because they're coming from their own
Mhm.
perspective, right? Their worlds, and there's no right or wrong. It is just what it is, especially in the acceleration of AI adoption. You are seeing, and I've been experiencing with the StoryCycle Genie, that the older generation is much more reluctant, and I'm saying 45 and up,
Mhm.
to the younger folks that are coming in. They're like, "Hey, I've been using this stuff already. I've used it through school and whatever." And then add to that the loss of a lot of entry level jobs because AI can do that stuff is not necessarily a detriment to those new people coming into the market. it's actually maybe doing them a favor by removing that minutia and the rigor of just that nonsensical work that AI can do and leveling them up to higher goals, higher ideals, and tapping into their talent faster than just being a pencil pusher or a copywriter or whatever. Having said all that, it seems like we are in the fastest evolving time I've
Ever.
ever seen in my 40 years in business, and I imagine that it's gotta kinda even reframe some of the teaching you all are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't look, I don't think that AI is ever gonna totally replace human teaching. I think
Agreed.
there's
Mhm.
always going to be the need for humans to lead classes because humans have empathy, ethical judgment, being able to connect and everything. But at the end of the day, I can't stick my head in the sand and not realize it is going to disrupt this industry. It's going to disrupt everything. So we don't have all the answers, but we're experimenting with a lot of different things, whether it's the AI coach, um, whether it's AI modules that are replacing some of the content we're doing, weaving things in. But if we think that what we're going to be doing now, 2 years from now, is going to be similar, absolutely not. So you have to learn, grow, and evolve, and sometimes unlearn stuff, right? Because you're either stuck in your ways or you try something and you want it to work and it's not going to work, and that's why I think it's great to have these different types of generations, right? Because you have these young kids who, are native with technology, and you get, somebody like me in my 50s who didn't grow up with it as much. And kind of, if you can get them to collaborate and work together, and even sometimes find a middle ground of and then, when people are in 5 years from now, what's going to be most important for them, or 5 years is too long, and just figuring out how to develop training and learning that will actually stick as we move forward in the future.
Do you have a futurist, or do you play that role in your company?
I wouldn't say I'm a futurist, but I'm somebody with a zillion ideas. And and that's whether it's through podcasting or just through my network. I'm really fortunate to have friends like you can get him on your show sometime. Ray Wang, who's a big futurist, a good friend of mine, and so I just take these guys to lunch or have them come in and talk to our team on a regular basis, and just have them push me out of my comfort zone and tell me what they think, and it's all data, right? It's all what they think the learning world is going to be like, or the workforce is going to be like. So I think it all comes down to you need to be curious and open to change. That's almost like one of the themes of the things we've talked about today. I mean, you really do. So I'm fortunate. I live out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've got access through Learnit or through just my network to have a bunch of AI driven, whether you want to call them futurists or whatever, who've got all kinds of ideas that they're more than happy to share.
Well, I'll have to ask you to introduce me to Ray. I would love to have him on the show.
Yeah, I'll do it right after this.
That would be great. You use that word curious, and
Mhm.
I love it, and I have heard it time and time and time and time again coming from marketers and AI folks and so forth. It seems like it's just lately been this big aha that people are saying curiosity. That is going to be your number one lever against AI. Get curious to how it works. Get curious to how you can apply it in your world because AI will never, ever replace the curiosity of a human being.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, there's two things. One, there's curiosity. The other thing is critical thinking. I think that you got to continue to build your critical thinking skills. But when it comes to AI, and I learned this from Jeff Woods, who I had on my show, and I read his great book, AI Driven Leader. Everything I look at now, and I try to model this for my team, like if we're trying to change a process park, or we're trying to do something different, it's no longer okay. How can we do this differently? I want people to be curious and say, how can we do this differently, leveraging AI? So that needs to come into every conversation. And when I have conversations, because I'm always kind of, I don't want to say poking my team, but like, what did you think about this? Or we did this event. What can we do differently? I'm looking for them to say, well, we use ChatGPT, or maybe we should use Perplexity, or the StoryCycle Genie, or whatever. But that needs to, leaders out there and everybody, that needs to be part of your curiosity. Is you should end it with, okay, how can we do this differently by leveraging AI, and start with that.
Yeah, it really starts first with your strategy developed between your human teams of here's what we're trying to accomplish, or here's what we're trying to amplify, or here's how we're trying to make something even better. And what is our current system? What are the systems we have in place to do that? Now, is there a way we could incorporate AI into, again, take out the minutia that is taking up all of our time and energy so that we can focus at a higher level on the creativity and the inspiration, the wisdom that we want to bring, and use AI to take care of that messy stuff that you don't like to do anyway.
Yeah, and that's great, and that should be almost table stakes at this point.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I use AI all day long to vet my decisions and judgment as well, right? I'll say, "Okay, this is what I'm looking at doing. Give me 3 reasons why I could be wrong," or, "How does this look?" I mean, I even joke about it, like, sometimes I'll be in an argument with my wife, and afterwards I'll say, "Well, give me 3 reasons why she's right and I'm wrong," you know? So I think it's so powerful to get in there and start using it not as a not as a thought leader, but more as a thought partner that
Yeah.
sits around side of you. Because yeah, it's always great. I mean, I wish I had somebody like you I could call and just, "Hey, Park, what do you think about this?" Sometimes that's not available. Or most of the time it's not available, but you could always go to Claude or ChatGPT or whatever and say, "Hey, can you be Park Hal and the ABT framework, and let me run this caption by you or this sales pitch, and how well did I do it based off what's going on here? Give me a 1 to 10, and where could I do it better?" I mean,
Mhm.
those are all these different ways that I have in the past, by the way, used that to vet some of my own work.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I'll tell you, when you put it in there, and anybody can do this, ask it to use the Park Howell ABT narrative framework. It's different from Randy Olson. He's the guy that taught me how to do the ABT. Um, he uses it in the science and academic world. And they are notorious for saying, we are not business people. We do not sell anything. And I come in
Yeah.
and do a lot of training with his science and academics. And I go, I hate to tell you, but if you're trying to get funding for your plan or you're trying to get someone to buy into your study, well, you're selling. So that ABT is a little bit different. It still uses the three forces of story, but mine is written specifically for influence and persuasion in the sales and marketing and training world.
And I'd like to say this to anybody who thinks they're not in sales. Well, I'd hate to tell you, we're all in sales at some point or another, you know. And it doesn't mean sales doesn't have to be this dirty word where it's, you know, car salesman. You know, it's negotiating a point. You know, trying to get somebody influence. You know, it's all sales.
Yeah. You have a 4-year-old boy, right?
I do.
I love the pictures you share with him, you and
Did you
him
see my
online
pod? Did you
running.
see my most recent thing I posted with him on a little podcast? You got to check that out.
No,
Uh,
I haven't seen that
oh,
one.
it's unbelievable. Yeah,
On LinkedIn, is that where you put it?
on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, I'll check it out. Well, what's the thing he will absolutely not eat, but you know it's really good for him and it has to be a part of his diet at some point?
Broccoli.
Okay. Damon, I want you to use an ABT on him the next time you sit down to get him to eat his broccoli and see what happens.
All right, I'll do it.
Then you don't have to report back and let me know.
Well, so it's gonna be a lot less expensive, Park, if I do that, right? Because right now what I do is eat those 3 pieces of broccoli, and I'll buy you a Lego set, right? So that's like the absolute wrong behavior. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I'll try
Well,
anything, but he's adorable, and he keeps me on my toes.
well, my point about that is to get your kids to even eat your broccoli, what are you doing? You're selling.
Yeah.
So everybody is in sales, whether you like it or not. You were one of the first pioneering adopters of the Story Cycle Genie, and you've incorporated it there at Learnit. What do you think of it so far?
I love it. I'm a big fan of it. You know, going back to our very first conversation, Park, I don't even know if you remember this, but when we first jumped on and you kind of did roll up your sleeves and did a bunch of work, you know, one of the things that popped out for you, you said, you know, through the story cycle genie is the word confidence is showing up a lot. Yeah, and that's something that we just had our EOS session around vision or whatever the other day, and I brought that up, and you'll see that that's popping up a lot more in our marketing and just our branding is that the confidence on the team, the confidence that we're delivering to our learners and the company. And so that is one big win right there. But it's also been a game changer for our team. Once we got everything, our playbook of our, brand, our information, of just going in there and tweaking the way our content is written, and going from being, I hate saying this, but product focused to using the StoryCycle Genie to be more outcome based and belief driven. So, I mean, it's just through the tweaking and the work we've done through it, I think you can see a noticeable, and I'm not just saying to say it, but a noticeable difference in how engaging the content on the Learnit website is. And we
So
got a
that's
long way to go. We're not done yet,
yeah.
but it's a good start.
Well, it collaborates with you. It does get
Mhm,
smarter with every iteration. And just so listeners know, we got connected about, what is it, 3 months ago now?
mhm,
2 to 3 months. So we sat down and did a little bit of a demo with you guys and put your whole team through it. And I'm so happy to, and when you're talking about that word confidence, by the way, you're talking about your emotional promise. The
mhm,
genie said, what's that one emotional thing that we
mhm,
want to make sure everybody experiences, from our
mhm.
colleagues to our customers to our vendors even coming in, and that is, when you work with Learnit and anybody from Learnit or learn from Learnit, you leave with greater confidence about whatever. So the idea is to infuse that in all that you do and you communicate. But what I'm so happy to hear you say, Damon, is that you guys have rethinked how you tell your story, going from features and
Mhm,
functions, logic, and reason, to
mhm.
talking much more about what are the outcomes you actually create in people's lives? What is the belief system that leads to those outcomes? So now you're really connecting on a very emotional storytelling level. And let's face it, we all buy with our hearts and we justify our purchases with our heads. So I'm delighted to hear that you guys have even evolved as storytellers using the genie.
Yeah, and let's face it, going into it, we didn't think we were being, feature and product based. I mean, we thought we were more outcome based, but leveraging the genie, it really pointed out that we weren't. We were showing up differently than we thought we were, than we, in our minds thought we were. So that was, I don't want to say humbling, but it was definitely eye opening to see, hey, this is a change that we need to make if we really want to be outcome belief based, not just saying, "Hey, our training and workshops are great." I mean, it goes much further than that, and so
Yeah.
it's been a game changer for us.
Yeah, that's great. And doing that pronoun shift from our
Mhm,
to you, as in the audience. What
mhm.
is in it for you? So I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah, me too.
So what's next for Learn It? What do you guys are you is there going to become a Damon Lembi AI out there that people can ask Damon anything, and all your 30 years of knowledge they can automatically get?
My wife would say, "Yeah, I'm sure that's what you have next." Um, but I would say I don't know. I mean, I would say I touched on it a little bit. I think what we're really trying to do is to help our customers through workforce transformation. So I don't want to say give up the training, but work with our organization and say, okay, how are you doing around strategic execution, AI readiness, and help them from a executive level work on that, and then have it reinforced through the learning and development that we do. So if that makes sense, because at the end of the day, as much as I love the training and where how fast everything is moving, you got to get to it even quicker. And I think that some of these executive workshops, or I don't know if you even call it consulting, is this place where you want to start, and then you reinforce it with the training, both live and AI based training.
So you're looking at the larger workforce transformation, the change that is afoot right now, to
Mhm,
help companies develop a strategy
mhm,
around how to do it, and
mhm.
then to come in and deliver the tactical execution, the way of training to make that strategy work.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, everybody typically has a strategy, but are they really executing on it? And if they're not executing on it, where are they missing out? And by the way, part of the reason why we're doing this is, and you brought this up, Park, earlier, the world is changing like never before, and the workforce is changing like never before. So there's so much disruption that they need to all of us need to kind of evolve and grow with it. So if we could help our customers on that journey, and get there, as AI, because most of our customers right now are getting ready to get ready for AI. But as that moves down the field, they're really going to need a workforce transformation partner. And I'm confident that it's a stretch from what we're doing right now, but with our network and our ability to adapt and change like we always have over these 30 years. I mean, we're not doing the same thing at all what we did 30 years ago. That's what excites me, is seeing the behavior change that we could actually make within these organizations, both for themselves, but obviously the people that work there in those organizations.
Yeah. Awesome. Where can people learn more about you and learn it?
So how we connected originally, you and I, is the Learn It All podcast. So check out Park's episode on Learn It All podcast. I have a great time doing that. Learnit.com is where you can find everything about Learn It. And we joked about LinkedIn. I love to go on LinkedIn and respond to people. So Damon Lembi on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I just started following you a couple months ago when we first got acquainted, and I love your posts. And I can see a lot of people love those posts too.
Thanks,
You
man.
have genuinely a lot of fun with your business.
Yeah, I do. And you know what makes the most fun of it for me is, sure, I love helping our customers, but I got about 75 employees, and I love my team. I love seeing them grow and evolve, and some stay for a long time, some move on, but they're always going to be part of the Learn It community. So that's really what gets me fired up to go to work every day, is a great team.
Yeah. Well, let me get you back to the team. Let me get you back to the plate. See if you hit a home run today like you did in the World Series. And thank you so much for being here, Damon.
Thanks for having me, Park. I had a great time.
As always, I'm humbled that you spent your time with us today on the Business of Story. And if you liked what you heard and you know anyone that would benefit from Damon's insights in the learning world, by all means, feel free to share this episode with them. Now, hope you will join us next Monday when we have another fascinating guest with us, Alberto Savoia, who is Google's very first innovation engineer. Alberto wrote this great book called The Right It: Why So Many Ideas Fail and How to Make Sure Yours Succeed. I know it's great because we used it step by step for the creation, the beta testing, the prototyping, and the launch of our StoryCycle Genie, so I know it works. He is a fascinating guy. He has done a lot in the startup founder world, and I know you're going to love the show. So make sure you're here with us next Monday. And if you haven't yet tried out the StoryCycle Genie, check it out at StoryCycleGenie.ai. You can test the strength of your brand story for absolutely free. It'll give you a grade from A+ to F- and a 14-point storytelling assessment that'll validate what you're doing well. It will reveal the gaps in your stories that you can quickly fix, and it's even going to inspire you with new ways to think about your brand story. It's all waiting for you right over at StoryCycleGenie.ai. And as you grow as a more confident, compelling, clear, concise, communicative storyteller, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one epic. Thanks so much for listening.